What's up, everybody? Welcome to the video. Chris Pinell here, breaking down my final thoughts for week 1 of the NFL season for DraftKings and FanDuel. Did a video earlier in the week if you want to check that out, going over the slate, but now that we have more information out with injury reports and whatnot, I feel like it'd be a better idea to kind of polish over everything and just give some of my final thoughts as we head into this weekend. And as I stated before, I am a data-driven person. This is a data-driven channel. We look at the numbers and we interpret them to make sense for fantasy football purposes. I'm not going to sit here and tell you we're all going to get rich and we're all going to win all of the money this week because I have all the hot takes, all the hot plays. I am not that kind of guy. And guess what? If you follow people that act like that, they're probably lying to you. So if you'd like to take a broad look at the entire slate and analyze it from a numbers perspective and try to talk about process when building lineups, I'm the kind of guy for you. And if you think we're going to make a good fit, make sure you leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel if you're brand new, and let's talk some football. And as always, we'll start with the quarterback position. Now, I did do a more comprehensive breakdown on this in the first look video because I already talked about a lot of these players. I'm trying to just kind of feature more of the players I haven't talked about yet. So if you want a more comprehensive breakdown, you can check that out. Put it on the screen right here. So we had Josh Allen, Stroud, Tua, Jaden Daniels, and Baker Mayfield, and Anthony Richardson, of course. Those were the main quarterbacks I was looking at earlier in the week. And nothing has really changed with them. Now with the idea that we have ownership projections out, Josh Allen, Anthony Richardson, Jaden Daniels, personally to me look like the best cash game options. All three of these quarterbacks are going to offer you rushing upside, which obviously increases your floor. You guys saw Thursday Night Football, Lamar Jackson over 100 rushing yards. That is 10 points on the ground, just let alone if you get 100 rushing yards. Then you get the 3-point bonus whether you're on DraftKings or FanDuel these days because they did update their scoring. That is just massive upside, a massive floor. Then whatever they do through the air is always icing on the cake. Now, none of these guys I don't think are going to rush for as many yards as Lamar Jackson. I'm just giving you guys an example because if you can get 40 yards on the ground, that is a built-in passing touchdown floor. And if you're looking at rushing props this week, Anthony Richardson, I believe, is at 44.5. Jaden Daniels is close to 40. And I forget Josh Allen off the top of my head, but he's right around that mark. He averages 35 rushing yards a game if you're looking at last season's numbers. So if I am playing cash games, those are the three quarterbacks that I'm going to target. If you're wondering what the difference from cash games to tournaments is, tournaments, very top heavy payout structure. So whether you finish first or 200th, there's a massive price difference in your payout. But if you are playing cash games, 50-50s, double ups, which a lot of people like to do to, help secure that bankroll and also play tournaments. So if you lose your tournaments, in theory, you are playing cash and you're cashing cash. You can kind of make up for the losses there because obviously you're not going to hit at a rate in tournaments that you would in cash games theoretically. So if you finish 200th in that cash game compared to first, there is absolutely no difference in your payouts. You're just playing these high floor players like Josh Allen, Anthony Richardson, and Jaden Daniels with that rushing upside. Now, if you are playing tournaments, you are taking more risk. Guys like CJ Stroud, Tua, they're not really going to run the football, but guess what? They can get you 300 passing yards. And while Baker Mayfield's not really in the same stratosphere as those players, he's still an excellent option down here at $5,600 in this potential game environment. But I already talked about them. I did add two quarterbacks this week, and that's going to be Trevor Lawrence and Caleb Williams. I have risen them a bit, and it's mainly because I like their positional players that are paired with them. And if I like them, I'm someone that plays tournaments, I want to correlate my lineups. That means I have to like their quarterbacks because they're not putting up points if their quarterbacks aren't putting up points. So T-Law here, I think this is an excellent game environment. Jacksonville versus Miami, both these defenses can struggle at times. We have a 49-point over-under, which is the highest of the entire week, a 3.5-point spread, 22.8 implied team total for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and 26.3 for the Miami Dolphins. And points are going to be scored in this game. Vegas thinks so, and Vegas tends to be pretty good at their jobs. So I want a part of this. And I can get an $800 discount off of Tua here with T-Law. And we also get a little bit of rushing upside as well. 21 rushing yards per game compared to 6 for Tua here. And if you're looking at the matchups, and you got to be careful with matchups heading into week 1 of the year because obviously things can change, schemes can change, and all that. But Miami was bottom half in the league versus quarterbacks last year, and the Jacksonville Jaguars allowed the 4th most points per game to quarterbacks. So in theory, we should have plus matchups on both sides here. And you have Brian Thomas this season who's coming in from LSU. I think he's going to be great. You have Gabe Davis now, who's obviously a hero or a zero. But then Christian Kirk, kind of the more steady guy in the slot. Evan Ingram, plenty of options, and they're really not that expensive. So very easy to stack T-Law, very cheap stack, and you can still run it back with a guy like Tyreek Hill, who's massively expensive this week. I think there's enough value to make it work. Now, Caleb Williams, I am adding him a little bit. We know we have some rushing upside, $5,900. I don't mind the matchup versus Tennessee. Now, this game is projected to be a little bit less scoring at 44.5, but we still have a pretty decent 24-point implied team total for the Chicago Bears, which is more than the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's more than the Indianapolis Colts, more than Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Jaden Daniels. So I want a piece of this game. And we have some pretty cheap stacking options like Rome Odunze to make this work. And you can run it back with a Calvin Ridley. We do have DeAndre Hopkins, who is questionable for this game. And when I say running back, I mean just trying to stack the entire game environment. I know everyone likes to say you don't have to do that, which you certainly don't. It's just one way to do stacking if you want to. I do think that Williams and a Dunze stack does make a lot of sense for a cheap one, and then we'll have to monitor the status of DeAndre Hopkins as we head into Sunday. And just looking at how some of the stacks grade out, these are just some of my favorite stacks and some of the quarterbacks that we mentioned. So overall, I do have it like broken down between quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end. Buffalo's going to be at the top of the board for me, tied with Miami this week, which makes sense. I mean, they have the highest implied team totals, should be pretty high scoring games. They are a little expensive though, and if you look at specifically quarterbacks to wide receivers, that's when you're going to see Houston pop quite a bit, because when you have three, I'm not sure if I should say three elite, but three like really, really strong wide receivers. I'm not sure I can call Tank Dell elite, but Nico Collins, extremely good. Stephon Diggs has shown he can be elite in the past. You can see they're leading the pack here. 63.4 for their projection. Obviously, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle doing a lot of heavy hitting here from Miami. And it's kind of funny looking at Atlanta here, because I only put Atlanta on because I wanted to talk about them. So they have three potential really chalky players this week: Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts. But if you're looking at their overall stack scores, it's just because the other surrounding pieces are just so bad. Like if you're looking at the wide receiver position, you have Darnell Mooney, Ray Cloud. It's downright dirty. So if you're looking at quarterback to wide receiver projection, it's basically because it's almost all going to London. And then after that, there's just really not that much to get excited about. Plus, it's kind of an ugly game. But if you're looking at, Kirk Cousins and Kyle Pitts, that starts to project a little bit better, because Kyle Pitts does look like one of the best tight end options on the entire week. And also, one thing to notice, you're going to see that Washington's pretty low down here, similar to Atlanta, but it's because they're kind of in that same category, where if we're looking at projections here, you're going to see that Jaden Daniels does look like one of the best point per dollar options on the slate here at 18.3 points, 3.21x value. That's only trailing guys like Baker Mayfield and Anthony Richardson. But the main problem is he really only has Terry McLaurin to get the ball to. Then other than that, you're really just hoping for the best. So even if a team doesn't project that well overall, sometimes there is like two pieces in that do project pretty decent, like point per dollar wise. Then you can build other stuff around it that really has beefed up projections. All right, we have now ventured over to DraftKings to start our lineup. We're going to select the quarterback. And just a quick disclaimer, because I'm sure I'm going to have to say this. Don't come on here trying to look for a lineup to steal to play in your contest. Don't do it. That is not a smart way to play. You're on YouTube, on Twitter, trying to steal lineups. You're not going to win long term. I am just building this on the fly, just trying to make sense for the way we're going to roster construction our single entry builds this year. And also, this is not a Million Maker build. I don't play the Million Maker. You're probably not going to like it when I say this, but I think it's a complete waste of money. If you're a more casual player that's not dumping 150 lineups and playing thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars every single week, the money for you is to be made in single entries and 3 maxes with low entry field sizes. That's where you're going to win your money. All right, so in my early look video, I went with Jaden Daniels. I believe he's what, $5,700? Yeah, $5,700. We're gonna go with another cheaper quarterback, but since in this video I'm trying to highlight guys that I haven't talked about as much, let's go with Trevor Lawrence here, $6,200, and we'll be stacking up that Jacksonville and Miami game. And we're not gonna do a FanDuel build, but just know a lot of the players do overlap. I just want to mention, if you have never seen this, they have a super flex option over on FanDuel, and I played it last year. Absolutely loved it. You don't have to worry about defenses. You can do double the stacks if you want, and all these contests are kind of like the size that I like. So as you can see, you have a super flex down here instead of a defense, and it is absolutely awesome. In all these contests, you have low entry size fields. A lot of them are single entries. I'd highly recommend them. All right, and the fun part, talking about running backs that all do the same thing outside of a few guys, and they're all projected within like 12 to 15 points. Yeah, always exciting here. For cash games, we already went over this earlier in the week, but Rachaad White, Alvin Kamara are my two personal favorites. They weren't exactly the definitions of efficient last season, but they get a ton of work, and a lot of it is through the passing game, which does boost that floor over on PPR sites like DraftKings. So if you're looking at Kamara and Rachaad White, 19.8 opportunities for White last year and 20.4 for Alvin Kamara, 6.6 targets per game for Alvin and 4.1 for Rachaad White. Now, like I said, they weren't efficient, 3.7 yards per carry and 3.9, but they're getting plenty of work. Both matchups are fine to me. If you're looking at Washington, they allowed the 5th most points running backs last year, and the Carolina Panthers allowed the 6th most. So really just nothing not to like here. They're going to get work. They're going to get involved in the passing game. They have nice floors. I have them projected pretty solid. They're going to be extremely chalky. I think Rachaad White will be the highest owned running back of the week. After that, it gets a bit murky, but I do think Kamara will be in that top 3 or top 5 as far as ownership is concerned. We talked about Bijan Robinson. If you have the money for him, yes, he's great. He's the highest priced running back on the slate for me. I have him right around 17-ish points. That does lead all running backs. I prefer the passing attack in this Jacksonville and Miami game. But if you were trying to get different and still play that game, you can play the running backs. Devon Chan, Raheem Mostert, Travis Etienne, they're going to get work. It's going to be high scoring games. And if we keep getting wide receivers tackled at the 3-yard line, who knows? Maybe all these running backs can get 4 touchdowns total. And that is one way to get different while still getting exposure to this game. I believe we talked about everybody else. Besides, I did add Javonte Williams and Chuba Hubbard just mainly because of volume reasons. And Javonte Williams does have some receiving upside. Not exactly extremely excited about those guys, but if you do need to go bottom of the barrel in the 5K range, they are my favorite options. Hubbard with Brooks out and Miles Sanders just having a talent issue. Hubbard should get plenty of work. It's not going to be pretty work, but it will be work nonetheless. Walker I like a lot at that price point. Does have one of the better rushing props of the entire week. He's a 6-point favorite at home with a 24-point implied team total. Hard not to like that. And then James Cook is one of my favorite tournament running backs of the week because people are going to want to play the passing attack in Buffalo. This is going to be an extremely high-scoring game. But they have the highest implied team total of the week. 6.5-point spread in their favor. They're playing at home. And James Cook is the RB1 in this offense. If he does not get vultured by Josh Hunter on the goal line, we do have plenty of upside here. And if you aren't playing the passing attack, it makes sense to play James Cook because you're trying to get exposure to that offense that will put up points. All right, heading back to our lineup, we have to keep in mind, I really want to play Tyreek Hill in this lineup, so I don't think I can afford guys like Jonathan Taylor or Bijan Robinson, and it wouldn't make sense to play ETN with Lawrence. So we're going to have to scroll down here a little bit. I do like Kenneth Walker a lot at $6,100. He'll probably have some decent ownership, but I think I can live with that. Then afterwards, we have guys like Rashad White, who I'm probably just going to plug in anyway. I know he's going to be chalky, but you know what? He's $6,300. I'll take the floor. And speaking of Tyreek Hill, if you're planning on doing some betting this weekend, don't do it without the sponsor of the show, Outlier. They have all the data you need, all the props, and all of the insights you could have in one place. And right now, use the link down below or the pinned comment. You can get a free trial on them to check everything out. So for example, if you want to look at some Tyreek Hill props, you can look at his fantasy score for over on Underdog for the last 10 games. We have all the matchup information we could ask for, team rankings, strength of schedule history, full rankings. We have props for his receptions, targets, longest receptions. We have the injuries for this game, the insights. Like maybe you don't decide to go with Tyreek Hill. Maybe you like this Raheem Mostert prop a little bit better because it has an 89% hit rate in the previous 10 games. But it puts everything in one place for you. It has the most positive EV bets of the weekend. It also has all the boosts available on all the sports books that you might have missed. So don't do betting this weekend without it. When you do sign up for your free trial, make sure you tell them I sent you. And finally, we have wide receivers, the actual good and fun players to watch every single Sunday. Running backs, they just bore me. I mean, you got to be Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall to get me excited, and most of these guys are not that. But the wide receivers, we have endless options of extremely talented players that are so fun to watch. Now, I mentioned in my first video this week that I am not someone that cares about the wide receiver cornerback matchups because I think they're highly overrated. I just think it's too much analysis to dig into it. I think you're just going to end up hurting yourself more often than not. So it's something that I don't apply to my process. Yes, if a team has a good matchup versus a defense that just bleeds points to wide receivers, yes, that's a good thing. But if Tyreek Hill had a bad matchup, it doesn't mean he can't do well still. So that's not the case this weekend, but it's just not something I really care about. If that's something you care about and want to apply to your own process, you do you. It's not going to bother me. All right, so don't stress out. I know there's like 30 receiving options here, but I'm not going to dig into each one. It's mainly all just about who we stack with our quarterbacks. If I have Tua, yeah, I'm playing Tyreek Hill. How's Tua going to score points without Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle? Like, he's just not going to do it unless Jonnu Smith gets 4 touchdowns, and I think that's unlikely. Braxton Berry was running 3-touchdown game. So if Tua is in your lineup, I mean, yes, he's got to go off somehow. And that's going to be because of his main 2 wide receivers. And I have gotten several comments before saying that stacking, people are relying on it too much. And the reason we stack is because people can say if player X scores more than player Y, and it doesn't matter who your quarterback is, just because you stack doesn't mean that you're getting extra points. And because if player Y scores more than player X, even though he wasn't stacked with your quarterback, that ends up being the better play, which sure, you could say that for all the hundreds of players each and every single week. But if you were stacking, in a way, you're reducing your variance because you're not banking on several different separate independent variables to happen. Like let's say we play CJ Stroud at quarterback, but we don't play any of his pass catchers because we think, for example, Justin Jefferson's going to outscore Nico Collins and this guy's going to outscore Tank Dell. So if you're playing CJ Stroud in that scenario and he has 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, well, there was a good chance it's because his pass catching options also went off. Obviously, if CJ Stroud sucks and the other guys do well, but the players you stack with them also suck because of that, that's the risk you have in tournaments. But if they hit that ceiling outcome, they're all hitting their potential ceiling outcomes. It's not obviously 100% science, but in theory, this does actually reduce your variance. I'm trying to make this make sense, but like if you look at a scatter plot, we have CJ Stroud here If we're not stacking with him, we're going to need Justin Jefferson over here to hit his ceiling outcome, even though it has nothing to do with our quarterback that we have. We're going to need Neighbors to hit his ceiling outcome and this guy to hit his, even though they're all separate from one another. If you stack within the same team, CJ Stroud, he is throwing the football in this lane of Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, and Tank Dell. So instead of 3 separate events that have nothing to do with each other, if we stack our team and correlate it together, this is just one event. And if CJ Stroud's throwing the ball, it's going to our players. And if CJ Stroud has a ceiling game, it probably means the players we stacked with him are having ceiling games. So it actually reduces your variance to make it less difficult on yourself. Because yeah, it's easy to say, well, if I played this guy, but there's a good chance you probably weren't going to play that guy anyway. It's just he happened to score more points, yes, but it's more difficult actually nailing these players at random. I'm playing Baker Mayfield. He's not getting me Lamar Jackson numbers with 120 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. It's going to be because Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, or maybe Trey McMillan down here, are scoring points at $3,300. Now, I do want to mention that Jamar Chase, if he plays, he did return to practice. He said he's going to be limited, and T. Higgins is extremely doubtful for this game. So we have a chance where Yoshi, someone told me in the YouTube comments, that's how you pronounce his name. It's Yoshi Voss, I guess. I'm just going to call him Yoshi. If that's a lie, I apologize, but I am putting all my trust into this YouTube commenter. So he's $3,000. He's the bare minimum, and we have a legit chance he could be the wide receiver 1 for Joe Burrow in this game. And if that's going to be the case at $3,000, that, my friends, is how we fit in guys like Tyreek Hill, Bijan Robinson, and Josh Allen in our lineup. So Yoshi, come on down. You are going to be a popular player this weekend if T. Higgins is indeed out for this game. And really, all the rest of these guys, it's just mainly stacking options with our quarterbacks. We did not talk about Justin Herbert. I love Joshua Palmer this week. I think he's one of the best value wide receivers on the slate. Khalil Shakur, I think I mentioned where I was kind of leaning towards Keon Coleman, but now I'm kind of leaning towards Khalil Shakur as being my favorite Bills wide receiver this week. I'm trying to see if we have any other wide receivers we did not talk about with the quarterbacks. Obviously, we talked about all the Houston guys. League Neighbors, I think, is fine at $5,900. I believe his props like around 55, 5.5 catches, if I remember correctly. Drake London will be one of the most popular wide receivers on the slate, but he projects awesome for me. He's in the top 10 in projections. He's only $6,000. He's Kirk Cousins #1. Look at the other wide receivers in that wide receiver room. I would try to get the ball to Drake London, Kirk Cousins. Other than that, I think we're good. I added Rome Odunze. I feel like I probably should have had him on the first one, but after our projections and stuff, yeah, he looks pretty good. Deontay Johnson, I did add $5,300 for Carolina. Both starting tight ends are out for the Panthers. And while this is not an offense I would try to target often, Deontay Johnson should get plenty of targets. Are they going to be efficient targets? No, probably not. It's like it's Patrick Mahomes targets, but I'll take it nonetheless at $5,300. All right, so back to the build here. We have 3 wide receiver options from Trevor Lawrence to pair with. And we also have a tight end, Evan Ingram, who gets the ball quite often. I am going to roll with Evan Ingram. I know we haven't talked about tight ends yet, but just spoiler alert, we'll play him at $5,500. And then I need one of his pass catching options. And if I could find the Jacksonville game here, we have Christian Kirk at $5,500, Brian Thomas at $47, and Gabe Davis at $45. I personally would prefer Christian Kirk, but we might need to save some money if we play Tyreek Hill. And with Christian Kirk, that leaves us $3,900 left. To be honest, we go just play a cheap defense. We do have Yoshi down there at $3,000 flat. We should be able to do this. All right, tight end's pretty bad this week outside of a few guys. I do want to mention Kyle Pitts did come up with a hamstring issue, and then he tweeted out on Twitter he just missed a couple reps for a certain drill, and he's fine. So $4,600. I would fully expect him to be the chalk tight end. Kirk Cousins is going to go 2 ways with the ball besides Bijan Robinson. That is Kyle Pitts and Drake London in this offense. You'd also think these guys would certainly get an added value this year compared to what they had at quarterback last season. Love Evan Ingram. We already talked about him. Heavily targeted last year. I'm not sure we're going to see that amount of targets this season, but should still be plenty involved in that offense. Dalton Kincaid, if you're stacking with Josh Allen, he's certainly one of the better options out there. And then Trey McBride on the other side of that game, he will be the tournament option. But to be honest, for me, like the bottom 3 the most, and I'll just be building around them. There is a couple flyers you can take. Really, it's all just kind of gross. All right, so we have $3,900 left for the last few spots to go to defense. I usually just try to play the cheapest one possible. We do have the Panthers at $2,400. I am not opposed to that. That would leave us with $4,650 left at wide receiver. If we do go all the way down and play the 3K punt, we have $6,300 left for the last spot. Over to flex here, and we should be able to get just a decent player like Jalen Waddle if we wanted to double bring back with our stack. You can do that. James Conner is a decent option. We have Drake London available here at $6,000, who I absolutely love this week. So I'll leave it blank and let you guys use your imagination, but From a roster construction perspective, like I said, don't copy and paste this, guys. It looks pretty good. Lawrence paired with Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram. That's 2 pass catchers. We're going to run it back with Tyreek Hill, who's the top projection play of the entire slate. 2 solid running backs, Kenneth Walker, Shad White. For 10, maybe Drake London's in the flex spot. And then Panthers defense looks pretty good to me. Like I mentioned earlier, I am going to run the optimizer here just to see some of the players that are populating. I'm going to do some quick settings. So if we head over to position stacks here, I'm going to stack my QB and wide receiver, potentially tight end from the same team here. We're going to save that. You can also specify which team, but I'm just going to leave that just as complete in general. And if we want to force a run back, like I said, you do not have to do this, and I don't always do it, but just for this example, we can do that. So let's just stack QB and potentially wide receiver from the opposite team. We'll save that, and then we'll run some lineups. All right, so I deleted the ownership just for this purpose, and the randomness is on for projections, so these are not the exact projections either. But I just wanted to pull this up here, and we'll see what players pop up the most. So yeah, loves Alvin Kamara, Yoshi, Pitts, Tyreek, Drake. I mean, yeah, all these guys are going to be extremely chalky. That should be really no surprise. But I just want to make sure that we're following the rules. So let's see, let's tag our Trevor Lawrence lineups. So we have Trevor Lawrence, and he'd be paired with Evan Ingram. So we have that, and then I have Tyreek Hill. So we have the stacking option, and we have the run back option. And then if we go to Anthony Richardson, if I was actually building a 150 or a 20 max, I would have specified that we don't absolutely need a stacking option, because if you are playing Anthony Richardson, Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, these kind of guys, they can get there based off of rushing upside. I mean, Anthony Richardson, Josh Allen, probably more so because of their touchdown upside. Guys like Lamar Jackson, you don't have to stack with them. Pocket passers, yes, you're going to want to, like Tua better have Tyreek Hill down here. Or just makes no sense. If we look at this Tua lineup, we have Tyreek Hill in the flex spot, running it back with Gabe Davis. So that perfectly satisfies our needs. But since I did not specify the settings for the Colts did not need a run back option, or a stacking option, I should say, it's going to stack. So we have Pittman paired with Anthony Richardson, and we're running back with Tank Dell. And some of the teams that are popping the most, Atlanta, like I said, overall projection wise, they're not going to pop that much, but like the 3 few players that they have that grade out exceptionally well this week, they're going to populate into a ton of lineups. Jacksonville, Cincy, because of Yoshi, Indy, Los Angeles Chargers with Joshua Palmer populating a lot. You can see which games here are getting the most. I should mention, if you guys do want access to the entire NFL model that I do show you guys here on YouTube, there's a lot more to it, including the projections, the entire spreadsheet. You have the optimizer on here, and the optimizer I'm not saying is like SaberSim by any means, but it gets the job done. With that being said, that's all I got for you guys. So if you enjoy, or even if you didn't, make sure you leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel if you're brand new. I'll see you all next time, and I wish you all the best of luck.